Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the most complex, source-heavy topics and make sure you walk away well-informed and slightly obsessed.
Hey, hopefully more than slightly.
Today, we are strapping into one of the most dramatic, politically charged, and frankly, technically challenging sequels in gaming history, Halo 2.
It really is an existential moment captured in code. This game wasn't just a sequel. It was a pivot point for a console, an entire developer, and a massive fictional universe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our mission today is to move beyond just the surface action and really unpack the source material surrounding the Arbiter, the Covenant's immense internal collapse, what we know as the Great Schism, and, well, the chaotic, brutal development cycle that, against all odds, birthed a revolutionary piece of media.
Right. We're looking for the story behind the twist, the geopolitical conspiracy that drove the entire plot, and that creative tension that really defined the game. We've got articles, interviews, deep lore, all pointing to a secret that Bungie guarded, fiercely until launch. The core high-stakes premise. Introducing a playable protagonist who was, until recently, the mortal enemy you were dedicated to destroying.
And that secrecy was absolutely paramount. Former Bungie content manager Frank O'Connor described the decision to include the Arbiter as a playable character as intended to be a secret on the scale of a Shyamalan plot twist.
Wow.
They deliberately kept the public and most journalists completely, utterly uninformed until the moment the game actually hit shelves.
That level of narrative ambition is, well, that's where we need to begin. Okay, let's unpack this disgraced elite and his purpose.
Okay, so to understand the Arbiter, you really have to get the Covenant's political and religious structure first. The rank of Arbiter, it's not a promotion, not at all.
Right.
It's a ceremonial, religious, and political rank bestowed only upon disgraced Sankhali, the elite.
So like a mark of shame.
Exactly. It is, by Covenant law, basically a death sentence disguised as an opportunity for atonement. The position is granted during a time of, existential crisis for the Covenant.
And the expectation is?
Absolute. Yeah. The Arbiter will die serving the High Prophets, fulfilling some kind of suicide mission that might possibly restore his honor posthumously. Maybe.
So Selvadam, the character we end up controlling for roughly half the campaign, was essentially handed of a very ornate coffin and told to go earn the right to use it.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
What was his specific crime then? What did he do that warranted this unique punishment?
His failure was monumental. He was the supreme commander of a particular fleet, the fleet of particular justice, dedicated to protecting Installation 04. That's the first Halo rank.
Oh, okay.
And he failed. He failed to stop Master Chief from destroying that holy relic, which the Covenant believes was the key to, the great journey, transcendent salvation.
Big failure.
Huge. He was initially sentenced to public execution, stripped of rank, name, everything. But the High Prophets, and this shows their shrewd political side, they spared his life.
Why? To use?
Exactly. They handed him the Arbiter rank instead. This let them use his considerable military talents, because he was a brilliant commander, while publicly maintaining his disgrace. It ensured he was both expendable and highly motivated.
Smart in a very cynical way.
Very.
What's fascinating here is the immediate moral distinction the game seems to draw within this concept of the Arbiter. Our sources mention a different Arbiter, Ripa Morimi from Halo Wars.
Yeah, Ripa Morimi.
Who a lead designer apparently described as a mean guy. He's Darth Vader times 10. Which is quite the statement.
It is, and the comparison is essential. Yeah. That earlier Arbiter, Ripa, he was narratively designed to be straightforwardly evil. Support a clean, good guy, bad guy dynamic for that spin-off game, the RTS.
Right, simpler narrative.
But Selvadam, our protagonist in Halo 2, is immediately defined by nuance. He's this character wrestling with profound religious guilt, a sense of duty, even if it's misguided. He's dangerous, yeah, and morally compromised, definitely.
Yeah. But
he's driven by honor. And that immediately forces you, the player, to see the enemy as something more than just alien monsters shooting back.
Okay, I want to dive into the genesis of this character switch because it feels so risky. It sounds like narrative director Joseph Staten and designer Jaime Grismer knew they were pushing something controversial.
Oh, they absolutely did. The idea apparently came from early story discussions. They were looking for a new angle for the sequel.
And Staten asked this question.
Yeah, the pivotal question.
Yeah.
What if you were the guy whose butt was on the line for protecting the most valuable religious object in the entire world, and you blew it?
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty interesting story, and one we should tell. It was an attempt to view the whole human covenant war through the eyes of the person who suffered the most catastrophic defeat against humanity.
That is a huge shift in perspective for a franchise defined by, well, a pretty monolithic hero. And our sources suggest Bungie was not exactly a unified front on this. There was pushback.
Absolutely. Significant internal resistance.
Mm.
A lot of developers felt they were betraying the core fantasy, of being Master Chief.
Yeah, I can see that.
The resistance focused on two main points. One, diluting the main hero's screen time, and two, forcing the player to fight alongside or even as what were essentially former villains.
So how did Statton get it through?
He ultimately pushed it through by demonstrating the huge new gameplay opportunities it opened up.
Yeah.
Having Covenant allies, fighting alongside elites, grunts, and having this narrative arc centered on political disillusionment, seeing the Covenant from the inside out. It was a bold decision, no doubt, but it fundamentally set up the entire trilogy's exploration of religious fundamentalism and ultimately its collapse.
Right. And speaking of religious fundamentalism and political nuance, here's where things get really tense. The geopolitical reality around the game's launch, this is post 9/11, 2004, really raises the stakes and forced a massive last-minute creative pivot.
Yeah, this is fascinating.
The Arbiter's initial name wasn't Arbiter, was it? It was Dervish.
Correct. Dervish, chosen specifically because it evoked this sense of an otherworldly holy warrior, seemed fitting for a Covenant character.
But then the real world interfered.
Completely. Microsoft Game Studios, being this massive corporation, they used what they called geocultural review consultants. Basically people who analyze content for potential cultural insensitivity or problematic political allegories.
And they flagged Dervish?
They flagged it hard. The name itself comes from the Sufi sect of Islam. And the consultants pointed out that within the game's existing narrative context, this was really problematic.
Why specifically? What was the context issue?
Because you already had Master Chief and the UNSC, which in that post-9/11 world were often unofficially interpreted as analogous to U.S. or Western forces.
Okay.
And they were fighting the Covenant, this fiercely religious alien empire, which already had a primary leader called the Prophet of Truth.
Ah, Prophet of Truth is a title sometimes used in Islamic tradition for Muhammad.
Exactly. So using the name Dervish for a disgraced, zealous warrior from this religious empire fighting the Western forces, it risked reinforcing a perceived and completely unintended U.S. versus Islam conflict allegory. The sensitivity around that was extremely high at the time.
Wow, so the name had to go late in the game.
Very late. It was changed to Arbiter, specifically to eliminate that potential real-world parallel. And the sources confirmed this change was so sudden, so last minute.
Had to re-record lines?
Yep. Recorded voice lines had to be scrapped and redone. And apparently some of the game manuals were actually printed with the incorrect name Dervish before they could catch them all.
That's incredible. Just shows how external pressures can completely reshape creative decisions, especially under that kind of deadline pressure.
It really does. It highlights the immense care Bungie and Microsoft had to take to navigate that specific historical moment.
And once the game launched, the reaction to this masked, stealthy protagonist, it was pretty much what Bungie feared, right? Mixed.
Highly mixed. Bungie's community lead, Brian Gerard, apparently called the Arbiter the most controversial character Bungie had ever created up to that point.
Ooh.
Critics were deeply divided. On one side, you had publications praising the added dimension to the Covenant. They argued, correctly I think, that the Arbiter provided the only really realized, compelling character arc in Halo 2. He's wrestling with guilt, identity, while the Chief remained largely, a silent avatar of heroism.
But on the other hand, if you were a fan who'd waited years to finish the fight as Master Chief, only to be suddenly forced to sneak around as an elite, I can see the backlash.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Some critics flat out derided his missions as some of the worst parts of Halo 2. A lot of fans felt the Chief's story got shortchanged, that his time was stolen.
Yeah.
But looking back, retrospectively, the view has definitely softened considerably.
Why do you think that is?
Because the Arbiter's perspective was actually essential. It allowed the franchise to explore these really complex themes. Political collapse, religious hypocrisy, the nature of faith and betrayal that Master Chief's more straightforward, heroic path just couldn't accommodate in the same way. His flawed journey, born from failure and disgrace, added this critical weight, this depth to the entire universe.
And as we move into the next section, we realize that the Arbiter's personal struggle, his gradual questioning of the prophets, was really just a single thread, a reflection of a much larger, darker imperial conspiracy that was already tearing the entire Covenant Empire apart from the inside.
Right. This is where Halo 2 becomes this incredible political thriller baked right into the sci-fi action. The conflict that sparks the Great Schism wasn't sudden. It wasn't just about Halo being destroyed.
It had deeper roots.
Oh yeah, centuries of socio-political tension between the Sankaili, the elites, and the prophets, Sanchuom. The elites were the military backbone, the protectors of the covenant for millennia. But influential, high-ranking elites occasionally questioned the prophet's religious decisions.
And those questions were dangerous, very dangerous for the prophet.
Because they risked uncovering the fundamental lie at the heart of the covenant, that the Forerunners weren't gods, that the Great Journey was a fiction, and the Halos, well, they were weapons of mass destruction, not keys to salvation.
That revelation would completely shatter the prophet's power structure, their entire religious and political authority gone, poof.
Exactly. The high prophets knew this. They saw these questioning Sankaili not just as dissenters, but as an active existential threat to their dominion.
So the Arbiter rank,
Yep.
It was already a tool for this.
It seems so. A pre-existing discrete tool to remove these problematic elites, send them on a glorious suicide mission, problem solved, honor maybe restored posthumously. Convenient.
But the immediate trigger in 2552 was the failure at Installation 04 and the growing mistrust.
Yes. The Prophet of Truth, especially, looked at the elites after that failure and saw them not just as failed protectors, but as fundamentally untrustworthy, maybe even potential usurpers. He decided they had to go.
So after Halo 1, Truth launches this massive clandestine conspiracy, a full-on coup to eject the entire Sankaili species from the Covenant leadership.
That was the endgame. His plan was audacious. Replace the sophisticated, sometimes questioning elites with the Jiralane, the brutes.
Who he saw as more controllable.
Far more. He viewed them as brutally effective, fiercely loyal, and most importantly, unquestioning military pawns. And to understand the depth of this betrayal, you need to look at the social dynamics.
Like a rivalry between the elites and brutes.
Exactly. The elites had considered themselves socially and technologically superior for ages. They'd treated the brutes pretty poorly ever since the brutes were integrated into the Covenant back in 2492. There was bad blood. Lots of it.
So Truth was weaponizing centuries of interspecies resentment.
Precisely. He knew this rivalry, this hatred, was simmering right below the surface of the Covenant hierarchy. And he specifically appointed Tartarus, a notoriously loyal and incredibly powerful brute, as the chieftain of the Jiralhane to lead the military side of this purge.
This plan was huge, involving massive secret preparations that almost changed the course of the war much earlier.
It was nearly catastrophic for humanity. Truth secretly started amassing this enormous brute-led fleet. Hundreds of ships.
At the unyielding Hierophant, right?
That's the one, a critical command and control station. Over 500 Jiralhane warships all gathered there. The plan was a massive, full-scale invasion of Earth, led entirely by brutes. This would have effectively sidelined the elite's military role before the main coup even happened on High Charity.
But our sources confirm this massive fleet didn't make it. Spartan 2 Blue Team intercepted and destroyed it.
Yes, shortly before the planned invasion. That must have been a colossal setback for Truth, a huge logistical nightmare.
So it forced his hand, made him accelerate the internal stuff.
It seems likely. It temporarily halted his immediate plan for dominating humanity, and probably forced him to speed up the timeline for the internal collapse. And things really escalated dramatically after Master Chief killed the Prophet of Regret on Delta Halo. That threw the Covenant into chaos.
And Truth saw his opening, used the chaos for the public betrayal.
He did. The official betrayal, the changing of the guard, happened on November 2nd, 2552, right there on High Charity. Truth publicly stripped the Sankaili Honor Guard, the protectors of the prophets themselves, of their sacred status.
And replaced them with brutes.
Instantly. Replaced them with Jiralhane. To the elites, this was an unimaginable insult, a profound violation of the Covenant's founding principles, their entire history. It was so shocking that even some of the lower races, like the Ungoi and Kigyar, reportedly protested, siding with the elites.
But the final act, the thing that truly ignited the Civil War, was the next day.
November 3rd, 2552. The Great Betrayal. Truth knew the Sankaili High Council would try to elect a new, probably more moderate hierarch after Regret's death, someone who might challenge his power grab.
So he removed them.
Brutally. He ordered a pogrom, commanded the assassination of all the Sankaili High Counselors. They were ruthlessly murdered by Jiralhane forces right there in the control room of Installation 05, Delta Halo.
And our playable Arbiter, Thelvadam, was right in the thick of it.
He was a direct target, a direct victim. Tartarus, the brute chieftain, personally tried to kill the Arbiter while seizing the index the key needed to fire that Halo ring.
And Tartarus told him.
Spelled it out. In that moment of violence, Tartarus explicitly revealed to Felvatum that the attempt on his life and the murder of the counselors was by the prophet's direct command. That single revelation, the hypocrisy, the political treachery from the supposed holy leaders, it shattered the Arbiter's entire lifetime of faith in an instant.
And the violence just erupted. The Great Schism began right then and there.
Instantly. Full-blown civil war broke out on High Charity, the Covenant capital. The entire empire split down the middle.
Who sided with whom?
The prophet's loyalists included the remaining Sanshum, obviously, the Jirulhane, and it seems many of the Kigyar jackals and Yanmi drones. The separatists, led by the Sankaili, found themselves allied with the vast majority of the Ungoi grunts and the Megalekalo hunters. It was total imperial collapse.
And then into this chaos, the flood intelligence, the grave mind makes its move.
Right. A truly pivotal moment. Gravemind basically rescues both Master Chief and the Arbiter from certain death.
And brings them together, the ultimate enemies.
But more importantly, it delivers the final, terrifying truth. The Halos aren't salvation, they're genocide. Weapons designed to wipe out all sentient life in the galaxy to starve the Flood.
Which instantly flips the Arbiter's entire motivation.
Completely. His objective shifts instantly from fulfilling a perceived holy duty to ensuring universal survival. And critically, getting revenge against the prophets who lied, who betrayed everything.
So out of sheer necessity, the Arbiter and his allied elites forged this shaky, unprecedented alliance with humans, specifically Miranda Keyes and Surdit Johnson.
Yep. That alliance, unthinkable just days before, was driven purely by the immediate threat. They worked together to stop Tartarus from firing Delta Halo.
Which they succeed in doing, just barely.
Right, triggering a failsafe. And then they relentlessly pursued the last prophet, Truth, back towards Earth and eventually to the Ark.
And the Civil War culminates there.
It does. The Sanghaili fleet of Retribution, the Arbiter's fleet, aligns with the UNSC forces at the Ark. They finally destroy Truth's remaining loyalist fleet. And the climax. The Arbiter himself executes the Prophet of Truth with his energy sword.
Wow. Ending the prophet line and effectively dissolving the Covenant as it had existed for millennia.
The Great Schism irrevocably shattered the Covenant Empire and completely redefined the closing stages of the Human Covenant War.
It's just an incredible, epic narrative. Conspiracy, betrayal, shifting alliances, playing out against what we now know is an equally severe, almost existential crisis happening behind the scenes at Bungie itself.
Yet, the pressure cooker environment at Bungie during Halo 2's development, it sounds almost career-ending for some. The game had to be perfect. It had to surpass the original Halo.
Which was already a phenomenon.
Exactly. And critically, it absolutely had to launch before Christmas 2004. It was the flagship title needed to carry the original Xbox through until the Xbox 360 launched the following year.
So immense pressure from Microsoft, from fans.
Which led to this atmosphere of, well, sources describe it as sheer panic at times.
Yeah.
And 18 months of what developers themselves consistently call brutal crunch.
We're talking, what, 50-plus hour weeks for a year and a half?
Or more. For a year and a half straight. The sources mentioned severe physical and mental tolls, burnout, shattered relationships, just a constant state of crisis management to hit that date.
And technically, things were falling apart, too. The engine rebuild
was a disaster, apparently. A massive, disastrous attempt to rebuild the game engine from scratch. After a full year of development, multiple sources confirmed Bungie did not have a fully working, stable, shippable version of the game.
How is that even possible?
Developers were apparently forced to create assets, levels, character models, without being able to properly test how they would actually look or perform in the final game environment. Like building a house blindfolded, someone said.
And wait, they were trying to do this engine rebuild while also juggling other projects.
Unbelievably, yes. They were trying to manage Halo 2, plus a fantasy RTS successor called Phoenix, a third-person brawler called Gypsum, and an Oni-like game called Monster Hunter. 4 projects.
That sounds like a recipe for total implosion.
It basically was. This overambition caused severe leadership issues. Production teams were isolated, running in parallel. There was reportedly no single leader able to definitively cut features or enforce a consistent vision for Halo 2 early on.
So the team just collapsed under its own weight.
Pretty much. The team only really consolidated and regained focus after they finally canceled the other 3 projects entirely. But by that point, the campaign they had was deemed unshippable.
Unshippable, wow.
Yeah. The final iconic Halo 2 levels that we actually play today were essentially built or rebuilt in roughly one incredibly chaotic year. pieced together from surviving concepts, salvaged assets, newly created stuff, all under intense, immense stress.
Which brings us directly, inevitably, to that infamous cliffhanger ending. It wasn't just artistic license to build hype for Halo 3.
Not primarily, no. It was almost entirely a direct consequence of the development crisis and that immovable deadline.
Composer Marty O'Donnell talked about this, right? The original plan was different.
He confirmed it. The original ending was supposed to be grand and glorious. The plan had Master Chief actually finding the Ark on Earth.
Wait, on Earth?
On Earth. And fighting alongside the Arbiter, who was still called Dervish in that initial script, to defeat the Prophet of Truth right then and there, finishing the story arc immediately.
And O'Donnell said the dialogue for that ending was actually recorded.
All recorded. Ready to go.
So why abandon it? Just time.
Purely insurmountable time constraints and the lack of completed levels and assets. O'Donnell put it very frankly. We just couldn't finish the plan. It was just impossible. They hit a wall. The holiday 2004 deadline was non-negotiable. They realized they had no choice but to basically throw out that massive final act and wrap up what they did have as quickly as possible.
That's where developer Frank O'Connor's quote comes in.
Yeah, the famous one capturing the panic. We drove off a cliff, Thelma and Louise style. Just cut.
And that abrupt cut became one of the most defining and definitely controversial parts of the game.
Absolutely. The ending we got is incredibly jarring. Master Chief stows away on Truth's dreadnought, heading for Earth. Meanwhile, the Arbiter kills Tartarus, stops Delta Halo, then the final scene just cuts back to the Chief in space. Lord Hood asks what he's doing.
Sir finishing this fight, cut to black, roll credits.
Yeah, oof.
The fan reaction must have been intense. People felt cheated.
Oh, it was intense. GameSpot's review famously called out the cliffhanger ending like a compact car into a brick wall. It left players absolutely desperate for closure they wouldn't get for another 3 years.
And part of that backlash, sources say, was also due to a disconnect with the marketing.
Definitely. The promotional materials, the trailers, heavily emphasized defending Earth. The fight comes home. But the actual gameplay only featured, what, 2 missions on Earth before the Chief leaves again?
Right. That definitely contributed to the feeling of an incomplete story, of promises unfulfilled. But here's the necessary creative redemption, maybe. The pieces that were missing, the structures built during that awful crunch, they weren't totally wasted.
That really is the crucial silver lining. All those scrapped concepts, the recorded dialogue for the huge final battle, the partially built levels for the Earth finale and the Ark, they were consolidated and became the direct foundation for Halo 3.
So the chaos of Halo 2 actually gave Bungie a massive running start on the final chapter.
In a really strange twist of fate, yes. The near disaster arguably paved the way for the smoother development and more complete conclusion of the trilogy.
Okay, so despite all that internal turmoil, the narrative bumps, the cliffhanger, the core mechanics and technical innovation of Halo 2 basically changed console gaming forever.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just a great game. It literally built the blueprint for modern online console multiplayer as we know it. Its legacy rests almost entirely on its revolutionary use of Xbox Live.
Because before Halo 2, console FPS multiplayer was rough.
It was often clumsy, struggled immensely with reliable matchmaking, easy communication, competitive structure. Halo 2 solved a lot of that.
Starting with communication, the mandatory Xbox Live communicator headset and proximity voice.
Proximity voice was such a simple but brilliant idea. It allowed enemies and friends within a certain radius in the game to actually hear each other when you spoke into your mic.
Which added whole new layers.
Oh yeah. Sources note it added complex new dynamics. Suddenly you could hear an opponent freaking out as you chased them down, or hear the enemy team coordinating an attack nearby, or just general trash talk. It layered this real-time, often hilarious social element directly onto the combat.
But the real technical magic, maybe, was the ranking system. We take sophisticated matchmaking for granted now, but that 1 to 50 system in Halo 2 was groundbreaking for consoles.
It really was. It wasn't just a simple level number. It was powered by Microsoft's quite sophisticated TrueSkill algorithm working behind the scenes.
Okay.
Bungie implemented this structured ranking system, levels 1 to 50 across different playlists. TrueSkill used complex stats to estimate your actual skill level and predict match outcomes. The goal was to ensure you were almost always matched with and against players of near equal ability.
Which made it less frustrating, more competitive.
Exactly. It made the online experience feel hassle-free, highly addictive, and above all, a deeply personal pick-up-and-play sensation, as one review put it. And crucially, It actively punished things like quitting early or boosting, which maintained a much higher level of competitive integrity than console players were used to.
And the data tracking on Bungie.net, that was insane for the time, too.
It basically birthed the modern competitive console community and stat obsession. They tracked everything: kills, deaths, assists, medals, flag captures, bomb plants, headshot percentages.
Even map replays?
Yeah, revolutionary 3D map replays showing exactly who killed whom, where, how. This density of statistics fostered this incredibly dedicated, skilled, competitive community focused on self-improvement and bragging rights.
And beyond the online stuff, the core gameplay mechanics themselves push things forward.
Definitely. Dual wielding was the big flashy addition, letting you hold 2 SMGs, plasma pistols, whatever, gave players new offensive options.
And vehicle hijacking, that E3 moment was huge.
Oh yeah, ripping someone out of a Ghost or Warthog. It suddenly gave infantry players a viable, really visceral counter to vehicles. Turned vehicle fights into these frantic, memorable close-quarters struggles where the driver was always vulnerable. Huge change.
Plus, a small thing but important, taking guests online.
Yes. The ability to bring up to 3 guests online on one console, one subscription, that was a massive social boost for Xbox Live early on. Made it much easier to play with friends local.
Okay, let's shift briefly to the technical and audio side, often overlooked because the engine development was so messy.
Right, but despite that chaotic development, the final overhaul did allow for some significant visual advancements for the time. Halo 2 was one of the first major console games to really utilize techniques like shadow volume effectively.
Explain shadow volume.
Before this, real-time shadows in games were often kind of blocky, low resolution, maybe just projected textures. Shadow volume used the actual 3D geometry of objects to calculate and project much more realistic, sharp, accurate shadows from dynamic light sources. It quickly became a mainstream technique. They also did cool stuff with reflections, bump mapping. Master Chief's armor looked great.
And Marty O'Donnell's music, he had a specific approach, right? Combining synths and live orchestra?
Yeah, and he was apparently very candid about his motives. He said his intense focus on creating melodies that were just impossible to forget was, in his words, part marketing and part job security.
Makes sense.
You create these synthesized mock-ups, these sample tracks, and then layer live strings, horns, percussion over the top. Gave the soundtrack that massive, epic cinematic scale, but kept the core themes really catchy and marketable.
Which led to that famous collaboration with music legend Nile Rodgers.
Yeah, Nile Rodgers, the genius producer behind Daft Punk, David Bowie, Madonna, Cheek. He was apparently a big fan of the original Halo soundtrack.
No way.
Yeah, so he was brought in, partly as a fan, partly as this critical conduit. He helped introduce established, world-renowned artists to the idea of contributing to a video game soundtrack. It marked a really significant commercial shift in how game OSTs were perceived and produced.
And part of that was the Mjolnir mix, the heavy rock cover of the Halo theme with Steve Vai.
Exactly. That track, featuring the legendary guitarist Steve Vai, just shredding, along with contributions from bands like Breaking Benjamin and Hoobastank, it set a much more intense, heavy, aggressive tone for the sequel. Vai's flashy instrumental performance on that Mjolnir mix became totally synonymous with Halo 2's high-octane action. Gave the franchise a harder edge.
Okay, finally, we absolutely cannot discuss the massive success and cultural impact of Halo 2 without talking about I Love Bees.
Oh man, I love Bees.
Yeah.
Arguably the first truly high-profile, mainstream alternate reality game, or ARG, used for marketing a video game. It was brilliant.
How did it work? It started kind of subtly, right?
Very subtly. It created massive curiosity and tension without explicitly naming Halo 2 for a long time. The campaign kicked off with a hidden URL embedded almost invisibly in a game trailer. That URL led players to what looked like a hacked website for a beekeeper. But it was actually an in-universe site apparently compromised by a rogue AI from the future.
And the puzzles weren't just online. They made people go places.
That was the genius part, blurring the lines between fiction and reality, solving complex online puzzles, ciphers, riddles that would lead players to specific GPS coordinate and exact times for real-world payphones scattered across the United States.
Payphones, wow.
Yeah. Players had to physically show up at the right payphone at the exact time to answer it when it rang. They'd receive pre-recorded audio clues advancing the story, or sometimes even interact with live actors who were part of this elaborate narrative.
That's incredible engagement.
It built this incredible, almost frenzied momentum within the community. People collaborating online, driving hours to answer phones. And the ARG's narrative culminated in an ending that explicitly implied the Covenant invasion of Earth was imminent. which was, of course, the key promised plot point of Halo 2.
It basically turned marketing into an interactive experience, demanding active participation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It showed just how hungry the gaming audience was for that kind of layered, complex storytelling that extended beyond just the game disc itself. A true phenomenon. Hashtag tag outro.
So when we look back at Halo 2, the dualities are just astounding. It was a game born from this brutal, career-threatening internal development chaos, a near collapse of the entire team. Yet somehow it delivered a revolutionary multiplayer experience and technical features that set the standard for a whole console generation.
Yeah. And narratively, it made the bold choice to sacrifice some of the Master Chief's clean, linear heroism to introduce the politically complex, morally gray journey of the Arbiter.
Which, in turn, allowed the franchise to explore that monumental, epic collapse of the Covenant Empire during the Great Schism in a way that just wouldn't have been possible otherwise. The Arbiter's flawed perspective, his journey of disillusionment, proved absolutely essential for expanding the universe's philosophical and political scope.
And it's really remarkable to consider how many of the game's most memorable, defining elements, the Arbiter's perspective itself, some of the new mechanics born from trying new things under pressure, and especially that shocking, abrupt cliffhanger ending, weren't necessarily purely intentional artistic choices made in a vacuum.
Right. They were often direct consequences of that immense pressure, the overambition, the engine troubles, and that frantic scramble just to meet an impossible deadline.
Yeah.
Which I think raises a really interesting question for you, the listener, to consider as you reflect on this game or maybe any big creative project. When does that kind of intense pressure become necessary tension? The kind that sparks fundamental, maybe even generational innovation? And when does it just risk burning everyone out and sinking the whole ship? In the case of Halo 2, it really seems like Bungie, somehow, against all odds, sailed right through that perfect storm.
Yep.
And launched a vessel that truly changed the industry forever.